I got into my car and set off for my new place of work and residence. For the next 5 years, the village of Meadowbrook was meant to be my home, and at the same time, part of what I believed was my brilliant and cunning plan. I was a young doctor. In other words, I caused pain for the benefit of others and got paid for it. But as it often goes, the medical field is fraught with many challenges, and experience is needed everywhere. In all other respects, as a doctor, I was almost illiterate. A village with a population of 2,000 meant peace, milk, flowers, cows. In short, I figured I could stick it out here for 5 years and then land a job at a private clinic where I would live quite comfortably. I looked up some information about the village. There were shops, internet, basically a microtown with cows. The local doctor, Michael, who would be my supervisor, was supposed to meet me. He asked me to call him when I arrived so he could pick me up. I drove, looking out the window at the dense forests lining the road. Honestly, I felt nervous. I was far from home, and who knew what awaited me there? Most likely, I'd get some rickety shack with gaps as wide as my height and would have to patch it up myself. But like it or not, I'd have to live there. With these jumbled thoughts, I spent the rest of the drive. I fantasized about how wonderful life would be once I got a job at a private clinic. Finally, I arrived and called Michael. As I stepped out of the car, I saw Michael, about 45, short, stocky, with sharp eyes. "Hey," he said, shaking my hand. "So, you're Pete?" "Yes," I nodded. "Let's head to town for a bite and a drink," he said. "But aren't we going to the village?" I asked. "We'll stop by the town first," he replied. "A new place opened up recently. Let's check it out." Michael drove, and I wondered what he meant. "You'll dream of this town, Pete," he said. "Once you've lived here for a while, you'll understand why being out of the village is a treat. Just trust me for now." "Look, you're young, but let me explain what kind of place you've ended up in. Work? There's not much of it, to be honest. People come for small things: bandages, injections, blood pressure checks. Your working day, unless there's an emergency, is from 8 to 12, so 4 hours tops. You can stay till 5 if you want, but there'll be nothing to do. Folks wake up early, and after lunch no one comes in. Life here is work, and work is life. You might get a call at 2 a.m, and you'll have to get up and go. Forget the concept of working hours. Here you answer when you're called. It doesn't happen often, but it does, so be ready. Most of the time you won't have much to do. But there are intense days, like when the school needs vaccinations. Then it's non-stop from morning to night, no breaks. Also, you'll be in charge of everything here." I smirked. "Well, I'm just here to put in my 5 years and move on. Right. I'll hand over all the responsibilities and authority to you. You'll treat people as you see fit. But here's some advice. Only say good things about others. Whatever you say, it'll reach the entire village. Talk badly about someone, and the whole village will know. This place has ears everywhere. Pete, they can turn against you just for something said in confidence to a friend. Everything becomes public knowledge here. My advice? Stay quiet and don't make waves. I'm considered one of them now because I started as an outsider too. But you'll be a stranger, and they won't forgive you like they forgive me. So listen to what I'm telling you, Pete. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. We'll be there in 5 minutes." By the way, people are already talking about you like you're the village news. I told you, this place watches everything. No one's even seen you yet, but there have been rumors for a week now. Somehow they found out a new doctor was coming, and that's a big deal here. They've even dubbed you the Clumsy Monkey, thinking you must have been sent here as punishment for not making it in the city. It sounds like I'm someone's servant. No one here can imagine someone choosing to come voluntarily. They're convinced this place is only for those sent as punishment. "Oh, come on. Can't you clean a wound, stop some bleeding, or wrap a bandage?" Michael said, winking. "Sure, I can do that," I replied. Well, then the job won't be too tough, I said thoughtfully. And where will I live? Will you show me? Don't worry about housing. There are a few houses on the balance, kept for cases like this, for doctors, agronomists or vets who come to work. I picked out one for you myself. Minimal dishes, water, electricity, gas, it's all there. Not luxury, but you won't freeze or starve. All the essentials for your first days are provided. Nice! Even that much? What about me being the hope of the village? I joked. We pulled up to a local diner, or as they called it here, a snack bar. Warm yellow light spilled out of the windows, and Michael assured me it was the best time to be here. Walking in, I was met with the smell of food and cigarettes. A woman stood behind the counter with shelves of drinks behind her. We walked up to the counter and Michael started ordering. "Hey, Lola! This is my replacement," Michael said. The woman's eyes widened and she made the sign of the cross. "Did you warn him?" she asked. "Of course I did. What kind of monster do you think I am?" Michael laughed and I felt a chill run down my spine. "All right, chips and a dark beer," Michael told Lola. I ordered fries and a sandwich with a beer. Michael grabbed a pack of cigarettes and we took a seat at a table. "So, what did you want to tell me? What did you need to warn me about?" Michael smiled. "Do you believe in life after death?" "No." "What kind of life after death?" I replied, smirking. "You should," he said. "This isn't the city. Locals joke this is the last bastion of civilization. After we eat, I'll tell you why things here aren't so simple." Lola brought our food, and after downing half his beer, Michael continued, "When I came here to work, I thought stories about supernatural forces were just village tales for kids and city folk. Then I met old Claire. She was ancient, sick, and had no family. One gloomy day, so dark that even during the day we had to turn on the lights, she came to me complaining of dizziness and high blood pressure. I checked her, made a note in her file, and suddenly she stood up straight and fell dead. Her face, whiter than a starched sheet. I tensed as he spoke. She was definitely dead. I checked everything, pulse, pupil reflexes, everything pointed to death. I went to the neighbour, Nick the carpenter, to help with the body. We came back to the clinic and guess what? "What?" I asked, holding my breath. She was sitting on the couch, as if she'd never died. She said to me, "I'm going to visit a friend," and left as if nothing had happened. Since then, I realised that not everyone here is exactly human, and I'm worried for you, Pete. "I had to leave, Pete. The plague had reached us. Vampires were around." "What plague?" "Well, you said you saw a wound on her neck." "Yes, I saw it. Those were vampires. They don't always go for the neck. They might bite your arm, but the blood flow in the neck is stronger, so that's where they aim. Claire lived alone. No one saw or could tell, so they likely targeted her. She died properly, and I believe you. This is how someone becomes a vampire. Bitten, dead, then risen. She's leaving not just to visit, she's leaving so people won't suspect. She's lived long enough, but imagine if she lived 30 more years, she'd become a local legend. That's why she's running somewhere quieter or to her own kind." "To her own kind? You mean other vampires?" "Yes. My old man said vampires can see and sense each other. They're drawn to their kind, so she probably went to be with others or somewhere far away. That, Pete, is how I met a real vampire. Wait, but what about sunlight? Their eyes, mirrors, all cinematic nonsense. Fangs, eyes, no reflections, that's for show. Vampires are simpler in reality, but much scarier. They eat, sleep, curse, just like anyone else. You'd never spot one unless you knew, but there is a way. They hate crosses, holy water, and wooden stakes. No, it doesn't make them writhe in pain like in the movies. It just makes them mad, but not uncontrollably so. If you splash one with holy water, they say it'll die. And if you mark a cross on your doorway, they can't cross it. They're cunning and powerful, capable of clouding your mind. To avoid that, Drink holy water. Drink it and you're safe for the day. They won't even try to approach you, and if they do, or you realize who they are, a wooden stake is your best friend. Many people have died quietly at night, in the woods or on lonely paths. Some whom you'd never suspect became vampires. They wait for you to make a mistake, to go out alone at night. They'll lure you away to the river, to deserted spots, and there they'll consume you, and you'll die, only to wake up undead. This plague is known to everyone. It creeps from the swamp side, from the ancient cemetery where the crosses have turned black and God has turned his wrath on people. There used to be a village called Elmsworth, ancient and strange, where a community lived. One day, I don't know what they did, but it was so grave that higher powers noticed and punished them. The land turned to swamp. Houses sank up to their windows, and only blackened crosses stick out at the cemetery site. They've stood for centuries, unchanged. The crosses don't rot, trees don't fall, and the place seems frozen in terror. No birds sing there. All that's left is horror and an endless silence. We fell silent. It had gotten completely dark outside the diner, with only a few scattered lights indicating other homes. The faint howl of the wind outside sent a chill down my spine. Michael placed his empty mug on the table and stood up, clapping me on the shoulder. "Come on, Pete. I've probably filled your head with enough nonsense for one night. Tomorrow I'll show you around the village. For now, get some rest and gather your strength. It won't be easy here." "Did you ever try to do something about this plague?" I asked, feeling my curiosity grow. "How many do you think there are in the village? Vampires, I mean?" "About 30%, Michael said thoughtfully. "I'd guess 30% are infected and the rest aren't. But if things stay quiet, that's fine. Otherwise, those who speak too loudly against it might end up hanging from a tree. Yes, we've had vampire hunters here, but their exploits didn't end well. Vampires are social, just like people. Maybe more solitary, but they stay in contact. And if one goes missing or dies, they look for a reason, and it better not be you." "Oh, they'd love to, but don't forget, there are forces of good too, although far fewer. If vampires started attacking recklessly, they'd be wiped out quickly. People would come and destroy them. So they act slowly, carefully, control rumors and lure people out. Don't think they're stupid. On the contrary, they're cunning. They can mess with your head. You might go somewhere with them, do something, and 10 minutes later not remember a thing." "So, Pete, you're in a place where your job is to treat patients quietly and drink holy water every day. Vampires can't come to you because of the cross on the door. Only regular people can. Stick to that. I'm telling you this so you'll be careful, understand? Stay home at night. They can grab you during the day too, but don't expect anything good at night. Watch their behavior and you'll learn to spot them. They're more active at night than during the day. Maybe daylight bothers them, who knows? If someone comes to you at night, stay inside or call them in. I've already put a cross on your door and sprinkled holy water. Don't even think of fighting them. They'll find and get you quickly. Now that you know the problem our village faces, it's best to stay quiet and keep to yourself. Most importantly, pay attention to what people say." We talked mostly about work and everyday matters. When we finished eating and drinking our beer, we stepped outside, smoked a bit, and then headed to my new home. I'd never believed in the supernatural, or rather, I'd never encountered it but didn't dismiss it either. I hadn't seen Australia, but that didn't mean it didn't exist. I just hadn't seen it, that's all. The same applied here. When we arrived, Michael showed me the house, helped me unpack, and insisted I drink some holy water. After Michael left, I was alone in this new house. The chills from his stories still ran down my spine, and, to be honest, I felt uneasy. I wasn't used to the village silence. It felt almost ominous. Sitting on the old sofa, taking in the simple surroundings, I suddenly realized how much my life was going to change over the next 5 years. The wind howled outside, and every gust sounded like a voice. My thoughts returned to the tale of Elmsworth with its blackened crosses and rotting bodies. I tried to push these images from my mind, but they clung to me like burrs to clothing. Remembering that Michael had told me to keep holy water nearby, I decided to follow his advice and drank a little from the bottle he'd left. Saying it made me feel better would be a lie, but there was a strange, calming effect to it nonetheless. To distract myself, I decided to check the house. The front door was solid, and there really was a cross nailed to the frame, just as Michael had promised. I walked through the small rooms, peeked into the pantry, checked the windows. Everything seemed secure. Gradually, fatigue began to take over, and I decided it was time for bed. I lay down and turned off the light. The room plunged into darkness, and the only sound was my own breathing. Something creaked outside. Maybe the old tilted fence, and the sound echoed through the house. I tried to relax, but Michael's stories of the undead and vampires haunted me. "Relax, Pete. It's just stories," I muttered to myself, but it didn't bring much comfort. Finally, I managed to doze off. As soon as I fell asleep, I dreamed of the village. Dark figures stood around, silently watching me. I couldn't tell if they were people or something else, but their empty gazes seemed to pierce right through me. Among those silhouettes, I saw Claire. She stood there with a face pale as chalk, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. She stared at me unblinkingly, reaching out as if to beckon me closer. I jolted awake, a heavy feeling in my chest and my hands trembling. The silence around me felt more oppressive than ever. Breathing erratically, I reached for the cross, nailed by my bed, and clutched it tightly as if it could protect me. "Damn it, Pete, you're scaring yourself," I whispered. But something inside me didn't believe it. I knew there was something wrong with this village, something I might not even want to find out. Trying to calm myself, I looked out the window. The darkness outside was thick and suffocating, but I noticed a shadow slipping down the street. It moved quickly and almost soundlessly, disappearing around the corner. I tensed, but told myself it was just my imagination. "Better get some sleep. Tomorrow's a long day," I said firmly, and lay back down, though the anxiety still clung to me. The next morning, Michael picked me up early to show me the clinic and introduce me to the locals. We drove through the village as he pointed out each house and shared details about the people who lived there, whispering his suspicions about who might not be entirely alive. I half listened, trying to stay professional and not give in to his paranoia. But the more he spoke, the more I started to believe there might be something sinister in this village after all. The clinic was small but cozy. The workday started at 8 in the morning and, as Michael had promised, ended by noon unless there were emergencies. I checked out the office, found the medications and equipment. There wasn't much, but it was enough. The first patients started arriving around 9, mostly elderly women with complaints about blood pressure or wanting their hearts checked. Work was light, but every patient seemed suspicious, watching me as if trying to figure out who I was and if I could be trusted. A few days passed like this. I began to get used to my new routine, but the nights were still torture. Every night I had strange dreams, always with figures and shadows, something unseen calling to me. I tried not to dwell on it, but the dreams grew more vivid and unsettling. A week or so passed, and though I was getting used to village life, there was still an underlying sense of unease. During the day, the village seemed peaceful. But at night, something strange stirred in the air. I'd hear rustling, like someone moving outside my window, and sometimes I felt like I was being watched. I brushed it off, but every time I lay down and turned off the light, the feeling of anxiety returned. One night, I had another strange dream. I stood in the middle of the village, surrounded by dark figures as silent as ghosts. Their faces were hidden in shadow, but I felt their heavy stares. Suddenly I saw Claire among them. Her face was as pale and frozen as when Michael had found her, and her eyes shone with an unnatural light. She reached out to me as if beckoning, but I realized that if I followed her, I'd never escape. I tried to turn away, but the figures reached for me, their grips cold and unyielding. I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, covered in cold sweat. The feeling wouldn't leave me, and I sat in the dark for a long time, clutching the cross by my bed as if it could protect me. The next morning, over breakfast, I told Michael about my dreams. He listened carefully, nodded and said, "Pete, this place isn't simple. Dreams here aren't always just dreams, especially ones like that. Maybe the village is trying to tell you something. Tell me something. What could it possibly be saying?" I muttered, trying to push away the strange thoughts. "You're new here. You'll understand over time. Watch people, their habits, notice the oddities. Someone might not be who they seem. And one more thing, if you ever see one of your patients at night, remember, they're not the same person you saw during the day." His words hit me like a warning. I didn't know whether to believe him, but I decided it was better to be cautious. The first few days at the clinic went smoothly. There weren't many patients, mostly elderly women with heart and blood pressure issues. I was starting to settle into the peaceful routine, but the dreams still haunted me at night. Each time there was someone familiar among the dark figures, someone I'd seen at the clinic during the day. After another unsettling dream, I decided to take a walk around the village one evening to see if anything caught my attention. The sun was setting, casting warm, comforting colours across the landscape. At first glance, the village was quiet and peaceful, but as I walked through the streets, I felt the eyes of unseen watchers. At the edge of the village, I noticed an abandoned house. It looked crooked, and the door was slightly ajar. I stepped closer, feeling a strange curiosity. Inside, the house was desolate, cobwebs in the corners, old furniture, dusty and dark as if petrified by time. In one corner stood a cracked mirror, and for a moment I thought I saw a shadow move in its reflection. I jumped back and turned around when I heard a soft voice behind me. "You shouldn't have come here." An old woman stood there, her face as pale as chalk. Her eyes were sunken, sharp and piercing with a look of reproach. "Sorry, I didn't mean to—" I started, but she cut me off. "This house has been dead for a long time, just like those who are here. You don't belong here. Leave." My heart pounded as I stepped out of the house. Glancing back, I saw that the old woman had vanished. Only the empty, dark windows of the house seemed to watch me, tracking my every move. I returned home feeling shaken. Michael's stories, the warnings, tales of dying villages, all of it came back to me, gaining a reality I didn't want to accept. That evening, the unsettling feeling lingered. Every creak and whisper seemed too loud. Even the wind outside felt ominous, like a warning I couldn't quite grasp. I tried to distract myself by reviewing my notes and preparing for the next day's appointments, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the old woman by the abandoned house. Where had she come from? Why did her words sound like a command? Dozens of questions spun in my mind, and I had no answers. When night fell, I lay down thinking exhaustion would take over, but sleep wouldn't come, and every time I closed my eyes, I saw the old woman's sharp, cold gaze in my mind. Around midnight, I finally dozed off, only to be woken by a knock at the door. The knock was insistent and rhythmic. I sat up quickly, heart racing. Who would come to me at this hour? My first thought was to call Michael, but then I remembered his warning. "Stay inside at night, don't let anyone in." The knock came again, louder. Then I heard a soft voice from outside. "Doctor, open up, I need help." I hesitated. The voice sounded familiar, but there was something off, something flat and monotone that made my skin crawl. I stood up, trying to stay quiet, and approached the door. "Who's there?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's me, Mary, from the clinic. Doctor, my heart." "I'm not well," the voice outside said, level and expressionless. Mary was one of my patients, a frail, elderly woman I'd seen just yesterday. But why would she come to my house at night when the clinic was closed? I remembered Michael's warnings about night visitors. The knock came again, more urgent, louder. "I'm sorry, Mary, but it's late. Come to the clinic in the morning," I said, stepping back from the door and avoiding looking at it. For a moment there was silence outside. Then she spoke again, but her voice had changed. It was lower, almost a whisper that sent chills down my spine. "Doctor, won't you open? We just need a little blood." A scratching sound followed, like nails dragging across the wood. I froze, unable to move. The voice outside turned into a droning, barely audible murmur, repeating over and over, "Doctor, open up, we know you're there." At that moment I realized that my night fears were more than just imagination. I pressed myself against the door, holding my breath, silently praying they would leave. I remembered the bottle of holy water I kept by the bed, grabbed it and held it tightly, the cool glass feeling like the only thing anchoring me to reality. The silence outside stretched on, and then I thought I heard footsteps moving away. I sat there, listening until there was only the whisper of the wind. Finally, I exhaled and cautiously looked out the window. The street was empty. The village seemed to have returned to its eerie quiet. But the fear wouldn't let go. I sat up until dawn, not daring to lie down or close my eyes again. At sunrise, I finally dozed off, but only for a couple of hours before the phone rang. It was Michael. "So, Pete, did you get through the night okay?" he asked, but there was an edge of concern in his voice. "Let's just say it wasn't completely calm," I replied, trying not to reveal how frightened I was. "You see, nights here aren't for the faint of heart. You need to remember not to open the door no matter who comes knocking. And another thing, those who come at night aren't always human. This place, Pete, it tests you. Be careful. I'll come by soon and explain everything." When Michael arrived, I told him about the nighttime visitor. He listened intently, and something like understanding and sympathy flickered in his eyes. "Pete, remember one thing. You're not just a doctor here. In this village, you're a kind of guardian. People come to you for help, but not all of them are alive. You need to know how to tell the difference, otherwise you'll become one of them." His words hung in the air, and I realized that my life here would be nothing like I'd imagined. That night passed surprisingly quietly, but the nightmares returned. I saw myself wandering through a graveyard, carrying a decaying corpse under the ghostly pale moonlight. The nightmares were brief but so intense that I woke up drenched in cold sweat. Despite this, I would fall back asleep each time. By morning my head throbbed, I was exhausted and my mood was at rock bottom. I decided I wasn't going anywhere. Getting up, I downed some holy water like medicine, pulled myself together, and headed to the bus stop. I wanted to leave the village, even if just for a while, to clear my head and figure out what to do next. I was about 20 minutes from home when I noticed a group of 4 men following me. They seemed to be waiting for the right moment. "Well, Doc, where do you think you're going?" one of them said, stepping closer. "To the pharmacy." "Ran out of painkillers," I said, trying not to show any fear. "Don't lie, we know you don't need anything," another one said, sniffing the air near me. "Heading to the church, huh? You reek of sanctity." With that, they lunged at me, beating me with an unsettling intensity, as if with purpose. After a few minutes, they dragged me to the roadside and threw me into the bushes. "Act up again, Doc, and you'll suffer. Don't even think about running. We're watching you," one of them spat out before they all disappeared into the distance. As I struggled to my feet, I realized that if I didn't come up with something soon, they'd either turn me into one of them or break me completely. I knew they wouldn't kill me. It would cause too much noise and draw attention from the authorities, but they could make me submit. When I got back home, I washed up and tried to patch myself up. My body ached with a fiery pain. I had barely sat down at the table when my phone rang. Michael's name lit up on the screen. "Hello!" came a voice from the other end with a tone of lifeless cheer. "Hello, vampire!" I replied, trying to suppress my irritation. Once I became this, I realized how pointless it was to fight it. "And you're fighting a losing battle, Pete. You have no idea how deep this runs," he said coldly. "Yeah, I figured as much. Your protectors beat me up today," I said bitterly. "They help people make the right choices," he continued with a chilling laugh. "Listen, here's what I propose. Tomorrow you don't drink the holy water, take down the crosses, go to the store and tell them I sent you. It'll hurt a bit, be a bit scary, but then you'll live forever. How does that sound? Why are you doing this, Michael? Why not just leave me alone?" My voice trembled, but I stood firm. "You don't understand. We can't leave you alone. You already know too much. Even if you promised to stay silent, it wouldn't matter. People have always hunted those who are different. This is a battle between two sides. And whoever wins gets to stay," he said with a smirk. "Michael wouldn't have done this. He was different. You're not him." "You're just sitting in his body," I shot back, feeling a chill run through me. "Until tomorrow, Pete. You have until noon to think about it," he said, and hung up. But leaving the village was harder than I thought. Every move I made seemed to be watched, and every step drew attention. I tried to act as if everything was normal and kept seeing patients, but the anxiety inside me only grew. Several times I tried to make my way to the bus station to leave, but each time someone accidentally intercepted me, a neighbour, the shopkeeper, or someone who suddenly needed my help. The more I tried to leave, the more it felt like the village wasn't letting me go. One day a woman named Rachel came to see me and asked me to come to her house. She said her husband was gravely ill and needed urgent help. I knew it could be a trap, but I had no choice. Refusing a call for help was impossible. Under the cover of night, I headed to their house on the outskirts of the village. When I entered, I was met with strange looks. The room was dim, and it felt like the shadows on the walls were alive. Rachel's husband lay on the bed, groaning softly, but as I approached, he opened his eyes, and they were filled with terror. He grabbed my hand quickly and whispered, "Run while you can. They're waiting for you. They want you to become one of them." I tried to process what he was saying. But at that moment, Rachel entered with several village men. They started closing in on me, and I realized I'd walked into a trap. One of them said, "There's nowhere left for you to go. You're one of us now, and resisting is useless." I remembered Michael's words about holy water and crosses. Thankfully, I had a small flask of holy water with me, just in case. I splashed it at them, and to my surprise they recoiled as if burned. Their eyes filled with rage, and one of them hissed, "Don't you get it yet? The village won't let you go. We'll find a way to break you." Without waiting for them to recover, I bolted for the exit. Everything around me seemed to close in, the village houses pressing closer, as if the village itself didn't want me to leave. I ran home, slammed the door shut, and quickly bolted it. My heart pounded, but I knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, I tried to leave for work, but standing outside was the shopkeeper, the same one from before. He wore a smirk and said, "You can't escape us. We're always here, even when you don't see us." He walked away, and I knew I couldn't stay any longer. I had to leave. I decided to escape that night when the village seemed to sleep. Gathering my things and my supply of holy water, I slipped out through the back door, trying not to make a sound. My only goal was to reach the edge of the village, find the road, and flag down any passing car to take me away from here. I crept through the silent streets under the moonlight. Though it lit my path, I felt the presence of someone or something nearby. I quickened my pace, resisting the urge to look back, but I felt eyes on my back. Finally, I reached the village's edge. But just as I took a few steps, I heard a soft whisper behind me. "Don't leave. You're one of us now." I turned to see all the villagers standing in a semicircle watching me. They didn't move toward me, just stared as if waiting for my decision. Among them was Michael. His face was pale, his eyes blood red, and he whispered, "You must stay." Summoning my last ounce of strength, I ran, breaking free of the village and not stopping until I was far down the road. I didn't look back and didn't know if they were following, but it felt like the horror was still near, an invisible shadow. When I finally stopped, dawn was breaking on the horizon. I had managed to escape, but the feeling that I was still bound to that place lingered. The village of Meadowbrook, with its strange inhabitants and dark secrets, would stay in my past, but its shadow, I feared, would haunt me for the rest of my life. Please write in the comments, support the video with a like, and of course subscribe to the channel. If it's not difficult for you, I will be pleased. You can also share this video with your friends. They will probably also be interested.